Hello and welcome to Fantastic Fights, the podcast about a middle-aged man playing adventure game books out loud on the internet. That middle-aged man is me, Hieronymus J. Doom, and this episode we're playing Inferno, Book 6 in the ninja-themed Way of the Tiger series by Mark Smith and Jamie Thompson. This is a change from the originally advertised episode because my copy of Curse of the Mummy, which I was supposed to be playing, is still in the post. That means we won't be getting back-to-back Way of the Tiger books to finish off the series, but best laid plans of mice and men and all that. Still, it's no bad thing to be playing a Way of the Tiger book, in this case the fancy special edition of Inferno kindly provided to me by Stuart Lloyd. This was the last one of the series to be released first time around, which caused some irritation at the time. The fancy edition I have here features a map by Leo Hartas and art by series regulars Sebastian Brunet, Uzen, Aud Pfister, Eric Chaussin and Mylene Villeneuve. Before we get into the meat of it all, I do need to thank a new patron, Kim Jensen. Thank you so much for your support. It is very much appreciated. If anyone else wants to put their hand in their pocket to keep this nonsense on the air, then all you have to do is go to patreon.com/HJDoom and pledge as little as a single £1 to gain my undying admiration, as well as access to a whole bunch of gaming stuff, including my latest gamebook Mutiny Most Merited, which I think might be the best one I've written so far, but I would think that, wouldn't I? In other news, all the entries for the Lindebaum Prize are out, and there's a wonderful treasure trove of short adventure gamebooks for you to enjoy and vote on. I'm currently working my way through the list, and so far the standard has been incredibly high. I've enjoyed every single one I've played so far, and they've all had a distinctly different flavour to them, which is going to make choosing the best one a real chore, albeit a very pleasant one. Do go and check them out, and then vote for your favourite. Now let's get back to work. So the story so far, we did a bunch of ninja stuff, including some assassinations. Then we rose to the rulership of the city of Erzmancast. Then some people tried to kill us, and along the way an eye got misplaced. Fortunately, a magical orb was found to replace said eye, and we were able to lead the forces of Erzmancast in a mighty battle against some further evil folks. Now apparently all is well, but that can't last unless Inferno is actually about trying to get an unruly garden under control or getting planning permission for an extension. Let's take a look at the rules. So, as quickly as possible, you've got a punch, kick and throw modifier that lets you do physical discourtesies to those in your way. You choose an attack, roll 2d6, apply the relevant modifier and try to beat the defense number. Then do 1d6 damage for a punch, 1d6 plus 2 damage for a kick, and no damage for a throw, but you do get a +2 bonus on your next attack. You avoid enemy attacks by rolling under your defense on 2d6, fail and suffer whatever damage is specified, unless you want to block by rolling 2d6 under your defense again. That will let you avoid the damage at the cost of a -2 modifier to your next attack. You should definitely block anyway though, because with only 20 endurance before you die, combat can kill you very quickly, especially when you've got some beasties doing 2d6 plus whatever number damage. Lastly, you can spend one of your 5 inner force to do double damage, which can be handy against really meaty opponents. You also get a mechanic to represent luck. That's called your fate score, which starts at 0, and a fate roll is a straightforward 7+ roll on 2 dice for something reasonably good to happen. Get below 7 and usually something very bad happens. The meat of the character creation system is the skills. You automatically get Shuriken Jutsu, the noble art of chucking sharp metal at people, and 5 Shuriken to go with that. You then get one skill that's either Shinren, which lets you read body language, or the much more fun Yubi Jutsu, which lets you strike at nerve clusters when engaged in serious acts of pummeling. Then you get to choose 3 skills from the following 8. Arrow cutting lets you knock arrows out of the air, which is really cool. Acrobatics is your basic ninja jumping about. Immunity to poison can be handy. Escapology lets you Houdini your way out of confinement. Feigned death is the noble art of remaining very still and holding your breath so that people think you've carked it. Poison needles lets you spit deadly needles at people and is clearly the best skill. Disarming traps can be really handy, and climbing helps with breaking and entering, and that crops up quite frequently, I would say. So, to supplement Yubijutsu and Shuriken Jutsu, I'm going to pick poison needles, climbing and acrobatics to cover all of that classic ninja action. Finally, we have our kit. This includes a set of fancy ninja pyjamas, a breathing tube, 2 different kinds of poison, one for everyday use and one for Sunday best, a single portion of flash powder so we can do the ninja vanishing act, and a flint and tinder for the occasional arson that might prove necessary. I think that is everything. Let's play Way of the Tiger Inferno. Peace in the Man March. On your triumphal return to the city, the streets of Erzmancast had been strewn with flowers. Your victory against Honoric and the Legion of the Sword of Doom has made you the darling of the people. The months that follow are among the happiest of your life. As Overlord, you will never be carefree, but your reign is now blessed with peace, both within and without the city walls. The forces of the Rift had largely melted away when news of Honoric's defeat reached them, and there have been no more raids from the Rift, the gaping chasm that men call the Bowels of Orb, since that glorious day. Your friends Glyvus the Ranger Lord and the Paladin Doré Lejeune became themselves fast friends during the celebrations, and at the zealous Paladin's suggestion, and against his better judgment, Glyvus allowed himself to be persuaded to accompany Doré on a punitive expedition to the Rift. They left almost a month ago to the day and are due to arrive back at court after the first day of Pantheos. Gwyneth, Force Lady of the Shield Maidens of Dharma, continues to oversee the keeping of the law and of the military with her customary efficiency. And the demagogue has persuaded you to sponsor a series of new buildings which he hopes will spark a renaissance for the city. I love the fact that Demagogue is still very much a character in this story. He's sort of charmingly, naively, a bit rubbish, but his heart is definitely in the right place. I really like him as an NPC. The treasury is empty, and you have had to borrow to make payments to the dependents of those killed in the war, but the people are happy. Your allies have returned home with gifts to show that they can count on you for allegiance should they ever fall under attack. The Man March is at peace. Still, you begin to feel increasingly uneasy as the month of Pantheos arrives and the days continue to pass. So that is our introduction. Facing it, there is a rather nice map. It's the same map from previous books by Leo Hartas, but it's a map of Erzmancast. It's got a really medieval vibe to it, with various buildings being drawn unnaturally large according to their importance rather than their physical geography. I think it's really nice, really, really characterful. And as an intro, that's a nice bit of scene setting, but I imagine it's not all going to be sweetness and light. So, the first section proper. On the 5th day of Pantheos, Force Lady Gwyneth asks for an audience, which you gladly grant. She is even more ramrod straight than usual, and her lips are pressed together in an expression of determination. A party has come from the Rift. Once again, I can't remember what voice I did for her first time round. I feel as though Yorkshire's a fairly good bet. Glyvus? Doré? You ask eagerly, but your hopes are dashed. No, we still lack news of them. The news that we have is all unlooked for. An enemy of this city has returned. A traitress. She spits the word out with ill-concealed venom. Only one woman is hated by Gwyneth in this way. Foxglove, the beautiful courtesan who ran the Order of the Yellow Lotus, the secret informers of the reign of the demonic usurper. You remind Gwyneth that there has been no proof forthcoming that Foxglove betrayed the city to Shandazar and the forces of evil from the Rift. What need of proof? Where was she when the orcs and the dark elves and their trolls overran the city? Gone! Disappeared, puff, into thin air. Pah! Into the bowels of Orb, more like. Now they are camped on the edges of our farmlands, guarded by 100 miserable quivering orcs of the severed head. They? You inquire. Another woman is with her. The warrior woman wearing a strange patchwork affair of scale mail. They demand amnesty from you before they will enter the city. They claim to bear news that you will find interesting. You pause to think things over, but Gwyneth continues. I can take them with but 20 of my cavalry. Foxglove is no fighter. Then we will see what they have to say. So, opening choice of the adventure, will we ride out with Gwyneth to try and take them prisoner, proclaim an amnesty using the palace crier, as Foxglove asks, or try to use your ninja skills to capture them alone? I mean, I haven't ninged, presumably, in months, so it feels as though a degree of ninja skills might be the fun way to do this. And that is, in fact, what I'm going to do. I feel as though riding out with Gwyneth to try and take them prisoner will give them some warning. I feel as though giving them amnesty is just being taken for a mug. So I think capturing them alone is the sensible option, quite honestly. Night falls. There is a new moon and wind. Conditions are almost ideal for ninja. You are able to scout successfully without arousing suspicion. They have chosen a reasonably defensible position in a narrow valley of one of the tributaries of the River of Beasts. Earthworks have been thrown up on either side of the river at a narrow point between the steeply inclined walls of the valley. The scree slopes on either side will make silent movement difficult. Will you try and steal in over one of the earthworks, or, if you are skilled in climbing, get above their position and then down the scree slope? Well, I am skilled in climbing, so that's always going to be tempting. If neither of those seems suitable, you can circle around to the head of the valley and try to come at them from behind, or return to Erzmancast and ride out with Gwyneth. I think we will make use of our climbing skill. What's the point of having a climbing skill if you don't use it? After an hour's climbing, moving as the mountain lion patiently stalks the doe, you are at the top of the northern slope of Scree, a very steep-sided wall of pebbles and slate chips. Not even a harvest mouse could move silently over this Scree. You pray to Quan that you will avoid the notice of the orcish guards, whose night vision is so good. Courage buoys you up as you begin the difficult descent. Make a fate roll. So that's 2d6. We're looking for 7 or higher. 11, that's much higher. Miraculously, you achieve the almost impossible. It takes another hour to descend the 15-metre scree slope, and your muscles are aching from the effort of exerting such iron control of your limbs. At last, you are within the enemy encampment undetected. So yeah, get me being actually good at the ninja stuff. You discern 2 figures sleeping a little way from the malodorous orcs. One has merely unlaced her armour. The hilt of her sword glints in the moonlight near her outflung hand. The other must be Foxglove. Her dark, curling tresses show up on the light soil, and she is wrapped in a threadbare travelling cloak. You can try to knock one of them out with a minute dose of spiderfish venom and then attempt to carry her off. Will you try to capture Foxglove or the warrior woman? I feel as though Foxglove is the one I want to get into my clutches more than this warrior woman. She's as twisty and turny as a twisty-turny thing, that Foxglove. So I think she's going to be my priority. Foxglove stirs uneasily and shivers a little as you approach, but you prick her neck and the venom does its work. She convulses once, then lies rigid and still. You wait until clouds cover the starry sky, then retreat across the earthwork. Foxglove is slim and weighs little. Indeed, she seems almost undernourished. By dawn you are 2 kilometres from the encampment, and a farmer is honoured to take you both back to Erzmancast in his cart. It's all going suspiciously well. Later that day, Gwyneth arrives at the palace with news that the orcs and their leader have retreated back towards the rift. Hooray! Gwyneth stays with you in the throne room to interview Foxglove. When Foxglove enters the throne room gracefully, you realise she is wearing the same peacock gown that she wore when you first met her, and she petitioned to become a member of your Privy Council. But it is torn and travel-stained, the extravagant peacock tail ripped off it long ago. She is still beautiful, but her fragile beauty is that of the forlorn waif rather than the sophisticated courtesan you remember. Even as Foxglove curtsies, Gwyneth fires an accusation against her. "So, traitress, you have returned to Erzmancast, the city that you betrayed, to the dross that issues from the bowels of Orb. Why did you open the gates to the enemy?" "It was not I who opened the gates, please believe me." "Opened the gates to the enemy, and when the enemy were beaten you fled to their land beneath the earth." "I fled because I would not be believed. Once the rumour that I was a traitress began, there was nothing I could do." You decide to ask Foxglove why she has been brought back to the city. "I was brought a prisoner of the warrior woman Cassandra so that she would gain entry to the city and an audience with you, Overlord, all the more easily." You ask Foxglove to describe Cassandra. "She is a cruel and heartless woman. I have never seen anyone handle a sword more skillfully than her, not even General Gwyneth. She has the speed of a cheetah." "What does she look like?" you inquire. "She wears armour at all times, a curious patchwork of metal scales. Her hair is spiked like the spines of a hedgehog. Some would call her attractive, but she is cold as an ice fish and has a sword to match." Foxglove's description has told you enough. It is the same Cassandra who is wanted by the priestesses of Illustra at Harith Sithacrow for the murder of their high priestess, along with other dangerous worshippers of the insane god of chaos, Anarkil. You were attacked by 3 of them because you had slain their barbarian friend Olvar the Chaosbringer in self-defence. Most clearly of all, you remember that she is a breathtakingly swift swordswoman. So, yes, we met her many, many moons ago, I think in book 2 or 3, I want to say. So, another lovely example of the authors, Mark Smith and Jamie Thompson, bringing a character back and making the world feel properly lived in. You can go too far with that sort of thing. The Star Wars prequels are a good example. But, yeah, it's nice to see characters reappearing. "Why did Cassandra desire an audience with me?" you ask. "She came to lure you into the rift. The Dark Elves have captured Glivus. They will put him to torture and kill him unless you give him the sceptre which is the badge of your rulership. If you deliver the sceptre to them, they will let you and Glivus go free. Cassandra hoped to kill you before you found Glivus. She still burns for revenge." You ask of Doré, who had accompanied him, and she shakes her head. "I do not know what became of the paladin. I have told you all that I know. Now set me free, I beg you." "She is a traitress, and should be put to the sword," says Gwyneth. So there's a picture of Foxglove by Sebastian Brunet. Pretty good. I'd say her clothes still look a bit neat and tidy, perhaps, but other than that, it is a solid piece of work. There's a sort of red and orange colour scheme that's been chosen, which gives her a sort of infernal backdrop that's very much at odds with an expression of fear and entreaty that the artist has put on her face. It's genuinely one of the stronger bits of art I've seen in this series. But will we let Gwyneth have her way and order that Foxglove be executed for the part she is alleged to have played in the sack of the city? Let Foxglove go on condition she never enter the city again on pain of death, or force her to accompany you to the rift? Am I too soft if I let her go? I think I probably am too soft if I let her go, but that is what I'm going to do, because, quite honestly, I've got no proof that she actually let people into the city of Erzmancast. I don't trust her enough to have her come with me on this little jaunt to the rift. That's a non-starter, but neither can I really allow Gwyneth to just straight up extrajudicially murder her. I mean, I suppose it's not extrajudicial if I order it, but I feel as though the death penalty is something that there should be some kind of oversight of, even in this kind of setting. Anyway, upshot of which is I'm going to banish her. That seems reasonable. Not someone you want hanging around, but not someone who I can legitimately murder. Foxglove leaves the throne room in indecent haste, and you order her an escort of shield maidens so that she may leave the city without being stoned. Note that Foxglove is exiled. Gwyneth seems barely able to suppress her annoyance and says, "Noble lord, you have taken leave of your mind? She will not rest until her intriguing has brought your downfall and delivered our city of Erzmancast into the hands of the Rift Spawn." Will you order Gwyneth to be quiet and strip her of command of the army? Seems a bit strong. Or say that you value her judgment, but that you cannot order even a former leader of the Yellow Lotus, the usurper's secret informers, to be summarily executed without full proof. I mean, the last one makes me sound like the most irritatingly right-on sort of middle manager who's all sort of like, I very much value your contributions. You bring a real intensity and passion to every project that you're a part of, but on this occasion I am going to have to overrule you. God, yeah, like something out of The Office. Yeah, we'll fob Gwyneth off with some management speak. Gwyneth murmurs something about pneumonia and the running damp in the windowless tower that is the palace donjon, but after a time she takes her leave and returns to her temple. You fall to pondering what to do about your poor friend Glivus. It's a slightly surreal thing for her to say. I'm not entirely sure what the text is getting at there. Is he just trying to insinuate that I'm ill, and that's why I'm making weak decisions? Anyway, we will ponder what to do about Glivus. To take the sceptre into the Bowels of Orb is to expose it and yourself to the gravest danger. Yet you remember how Glivus had already indebted you to him many times over. If it were not for the warning of Glivus that fateful day on the island of Tranquil Dreams, your god Quan would have been incarcerated in Inferno. Today you would probably not now be overlord of the city, as he risked his life for you in the battle against the Legion of the Sword of Doom. Your course is clear. You will risk all to save your friend. You cannot ask another to share with you the dangers of the rift. In any case, stealth is your greatest asset, so you must journey alone. And I like that. It maybe seems weird on one level to, as the Overlord, not to go out with a full army. I mean, an army to act as a distraction, at the very least, but it's recentering the story on doing ninja stuff. And I think if there's something that the experimentation of the previous books has demonstrated, it's that the system they've created is really, really good at modelling ninja stuff and not so good at modelling other things, which creates some problems when your entire character creation is focused on ninja stuff. So I think, yeah, a focus on a solitary adventurer sneaking about to do a rescue mission seems entirely appropriate. You take the sceptre and swathe it in black cloth, then hide it inside your ninja costume. Leaving Gwyneth orders to publish the news that you are journeying to meet two saviours of the city, you prepare to set off to that darkest pit of evil, the Bowels of Orb. One other artefact you take from the royal armoury. This is the Torch of Lumen, an ebony rod topped by a cone of alabaster. When the alabaster is touched, it gives off a constant light that will be invaluable in the eternal darkness of the rift. It was enchanted by your father's most powerful sorcerer, and looks to all but its bearer as an ordinary brazier. You may receive healing if necessary before you depart. Restore your endurance to 20 if you've been wounded. I have not. So I've got the sceptre and the Torch of Lumen. It's done a really good job of giving you just enough flavour of being the ruler of Erzmancast in the opening without it sort of really dragging the plot down. So that's nice. The rift has been a cauldron of evil since time immemorial. All manner of wicked and unnatural creatures spawn there, giving rise to an endless stream of evil pouring from the dark chasm across the lands of men. Dark elves, sisters of Nulak, orcs, old ones, sons of Nil, plague trolls. These are but a few of the denizens lurking in that unending darkness. The chasm itself is like an immense gorge surrounded by a honeycomb of natural tunnels and cavern halls which stretch to the very centre of Orb. A man could walk for a lifetime in the Bowels of Orb and still not trace every catacomb and vault. You decide to make for the northern end of the rift. Oh, it's done a great job of selling me on the dark dangers of the rift. I am quite intimidated, though it has been a while since I was last able to make a decision. And it's journeyed to the rift with indecent haste. It's a bit where I probably would have put in some kind of little encounter en route, but apparently no, it's all fine. We're just going straight from Erzmancast to the rift. You reach the edge of the great chasm without glimpsing any of the dark elf magicians who might be on the lookout for you. The air is rank with the smells of sulphur and ammonia. Stale, hot air seeps out of the great fissures that split the barren rock. There are no wild animals here at the edge of the Bowels of Orb, only dust. At the lip of the chasm you pause to look down. There is no bottom, or if there is, it is lost in darkness kilometres below. To the east you can dimly see the other wall, towering a kilometre above you like a distant bank of cloud. There are many twisting stairways and tracks leading down the side of the canyon wall, and there is even a road wide enough for carts and siege machines winding snake-like into the depths of the earth. It must have been terrible labour to haul up to the light the engines that attacked your city. Will you take one of the twisting stairways or the road? I do quite like a twisting stairway, so that's the option I'm going to take. The nearest stairway is crumbling and unused, and the steps are half eroded in places, but you make your way steadily down into the gloom. After half an hour's climb, in which time you have seen no living creature, you come to a gallery of cave served by many tunnels and paths cut into the side of the canyon wall. You have reached the first tier and are already in a twilight world. You touch the torch of lumen and it casts a gentle glow about you. You will need light from here on. The gallery of caves is enormous. There are storerooms, mostly plundered, and a forge and an armoury, both deserted. But further down you can hear sounds of life. There is a certain amount of growling and wailing, and much low chatter in guttural, complaining voices. The sounds are familiar as those of a slum. Here the refuse, the helpless or foolishly scrupulous inhabitants of the rift are forced to eke out their days. Here they are closest to the danger of crusaders, madmen like the paladin Doré Lejeune, who come to the Bowels of Orb to attempt to slay evil beings indiscriminately, or to the many renegade orcish tribes who do not obey the Black Widow. You decide to take the tunnels and descend to the next tier away from the chasm's edge. Were you spotted on the roadway that leads down into the rift? I was not. It notes that you only count as being spotted if you are instructed to make a note on your character sheet, which I wasn't. So, nice bit of clarity there. That's something that I do really appreciate, actually, from a design perspective. It can be clunky, but you do need to make game prompts unambiguous. And this is a good example of putting just a little bit in parentheses to let you know that a very specific condition must be met for you to be spotted. Which is really good, sensible game design. And it's something I would urge everyone to do. If there are things that you want your player to remember and which will have a game operation, you should always get them to write it down on the character sheet. because that just avoids any ambiguity. Like, use keywords for it, whatever, an object, but get them to write something down on the character sheet so they're not relying entirely on their memory of, was I spotted? I remember that the Dark Elf magicians could potentially have spotted me. Does that count? No, don't have anything written down, doesn't count. So, we were not spotted. Let's descend further. You duck into the tunnel before anyone notices you and creep onwards, taking care always to descend towards the second tier. A little bit of a kind of Dante-esque vibe to this, with different circles of hell. It is called Inferno, after all, which is the first of Dante's great poems. Many tunnels converge on a cavern where you make out a fresco that chills your blood. It shows a great web with a black widow spider, identifiable by the scarlet hourglass shape on its back, testing all the lines from the web with her legs. At each extremity is a smaller version of her, crawling over some poor unfortunate, orc, dark elf or human. Even an old one is shown, trying vainly to free itself from a silken web. Another fresco shows a paladin in full armour, but without helm. He is being assailed by the small spiders which seem to be creeping into his ears and nose, and, as he screams, into his mouth. So, I know what's cropping up in my nightmares tonight. I don't know about you. Mouthful of spiders, is it? Yep, that's what I'm dreaming about tonight. Great bit of horror imagery. The tunnel you are in is joined by several others and then winds down steadily into the depths of Orb. Soon you are down to the populous second tier. Here complete villages and towns exist, trading with one another, mining and raiding each other for slaves and booty. You take a moment, just a moment, to rest and eat the supplies you brought with you. After this point you will have to start going even more carefully. Countless tunnels diverge in all directions at this level. Finding your way if you keep to the smaller tunnels will be difficult. If you take the broader tunnels, you run a greater risk of being spotted. Will you try to find yourself a disguise so that you can bluff your way down to the lower tiers, or rely upon stealth? I feel like disguise is a pretty classic bit of ninja skill, and it's one that is referenced as a thing we are good at in the opening. It's not one of the skills you sort of write down on your character sheet, but in the background of the game it does say that you are pretty good at the old pretending to be someone you're not. So we're going to try and find a disguise. Is Foxglove with you? She is not. It should not be too hard to find yourself a disguise here on the second tier. So you see, this is a great example of how difficult it can be to write around NPCs in a gamebook, because Foxglove has made not a peep, as far as I can tell, for the entire journey down through the first tier of the rift. And then she has an opportunity to pop up, get in the way, I guess. Procuring two disguises is always going to be somewhat more difficult. But if you're writing NPCs well, they need to be kind of constantly there. And that's because we as human beings, we attend to people preferentially, unless you're somewhat neurodivergent or have some other kind of mental health condition. People are very interested in people, which means it always rings as bizarre not to have any input from a character like Foxglove during that descent. And the way to do it is to basically decide, when you're writing a game book, if a section is going to have an NPC with you or not at an early stage, and write it around that, because otherwise you are effectively committing yourself to writing two different versions of that section, which isn't the worst thing in the world, but is a genuinely difficult thing to do well. So, yeah, NPCs, they need to be either definitively present or definitively absent to really enable a strong suspension of disbelief. This is all stuff I should be talking about at the end rather than in the middle, but, sometimes this stuff just leaps out at me. It should not be too hard to find yourself a disguise here on the second tier. You wait and listen for some time before deciding on the direction to take, hoping it is one that will lead you to a creature of some sort, but not into the arms of too many at once. For an hour, you scour the tunnels and caverns of the second tier. They are as lively as the streets of a market town, but the darkness discourages conversation. The people of the second tier, low in the hierarchy of power, are too busy conserving enough energy to keep alive to indulge in frivolity. Several times you are almost spotted, but at length you come to a cavern with a stone facade built across its front like a house. You can clearly hear the sinisterly musical voices of two dark elves inside. It's really doing a great job of selling the Rift as a place even more unpleasant than Milton Keynes. I know I often deride Milton Keynes, but honestly, the psychogeography of that place is just demented. The Dark Elves must have clothes that you could use as a disguise. Nearby is a small hole in the rock through which a shifty-looking monkey-like ball of fur squeezes, thumbing its nose at the little cavern house as it goes. The fur is the coat of a wolf, and the Shambler is an intelligent man-like being with short arms and bandy legs. It is shaped like an orc, but is fairer of face. So, will you steal into the cavern house or follow the Shambler through the hole? I'm intrigued by this Shambler. I don't want to fight two Dark Elves at once if I can possibly avoid it, so I feel as though the Shambler is the one to go for. The Shambler squeezes along the narrow tunnel, scuffing dried excrement as it goes. You realise that it's heading for its lair, a low-ceilinged cave. Nimbly you creep up behind it and slip the wire of your garrote around its thick neck. Within seconds you are gently lowering the Shambler to the ground and stripping it of its grime-ridden furs. Using your skills as an impersonator, you are able to mimic its shambling gait. Only someone looking at you closely would realise you were human. So we've done a murder of someone who wasn't bothering us in the slightest, but apparently only evil people live in the Rift, so it's kind of morally fine. And I'm not complaining because it's a classic bit of ninja action to sneak up behind someone and do a bit of the old garrotting. Perfectly happy with that. So, do you need to find your disguise for Foxglove? I do not. There is a choice of tunnels ahead of you. A small tunnel branches away deep into the rock, away from the direction of the cavern, and a wider tunnel, which has rusty rails at one side of it, leads gently downwards and ahead. I think we'll go with the small tunnel, try and stay off the beaten path. The narrow tunnel ends abruptly in a steep stone stairway shelving deeply down. Since Glyvus is almost certainly many tiers below, you decide to take the stairs. After a long climb, you come to the edge of a great cavern. It is far too big for the torch of Lumen to cast light on its far side. Alert to the slightest sound, you set off across the immense vault. It's kind of making me want to play Minecraft again. I haven't played Minecraft in ages. I played Minecraft in a very silly way where I kind of treat it more like a walking simulator than a building game, but I do enjoy it. The echoing of your footsteps, no matter how stealthily you tread, returns from the faraway walls of the cavern. The feeling of being so far underground, surrounded by foes, is becoming overpoweringly unpleasant. The tension is unbearable. You feel trapped and vulnerable, and even begin to hear footsteps approaching that aren't there. When you are about halfway across the vault, judging by the echoes, you realise that the footsteps are real, and they are closing in on you from all sides. Suddenly there is a whoosh of flame, and a ring of fire bursts up ahead of you. Then others to the left and right. The vault is like a huge underground temple. Mock pillars that no longer quite reach to the ceiling cast shadows at irregular intervals. The approaching footsteps are those of a party of orcs led by two dark elves in blue cloaks. They have been walking towards the glow of the torch of Lumen, but now they can see you in the light of the fires. The chase is on. Ahead of you, 30 metres away, is a gallery leading to stairs, but it is guarded by a score of orcs with crossbows. To the right, 15 metres away, is another tunnel, but this is guarded by two ogres wearing leather armour and wielding 4-metre-long pikes, like the men of Antiochus used in the golden age of the inner sea. To the left of you, about 12 metres away, are the elves and the orcs. Will you run towards the ogres or the gallery, or stop where you are? I feel as though I could bluff my way past the ogres more easily than the dark elves, but like any law enforcement, I imagine they will treat moving at a speed faster than a slow walk as prima facie evidence of guilt in something. So I think I'm going to try and stop where I am and bluff my way past the dark elves and orcs. The dark elves give a series of commands in their lilting language, and the orcs and ogres close in around you. "What are you doing, profaning the goddess's secret vault?" says one. You can only guess which goddess this elfin sorceress is referring to, and you can only respond in the common tongue spoken by humans. Will you tell them that you live on the 4th tier, where legend has it there is, or was, a colony of evil humans living among the other beings, that you have come here to pray, or surrender to them? Well, I am absolutely not going to surrender. I am going to try and bluff my way past it. That is definitely what I would do in a role-playing game. Just try and make something up. "To which deity do you wish to pray?" asks the sorceress. "Will you say that you came to pray to the All-Mother, fountain of all life?" Doesn't sound good. "Nulak, the supreme queen that rules in malicious envy? Tanajla, the guardian of elvendom and patroness of women who practice magic? Or Zararial, Zarahriel. That is not an easy word to say. Zarahriel, the temptress. Tanajla, the guardian of elvendom and patroness of women who practice magic, seems plausible, but why would I? Avengers gender ever specified? I don't think Avengers gender ever is specified. I think they've been fairly careful about that. So Avenger could be a man or a woman or something in between. But if we assume that Avenger is like me, the cis man, they're a bit weird to be praying to the patroness of women who practice magic. So yeah, I think I'll go with Nulak, the supreme queen that rules in malicious envy. Because I feel as though that spider creature might have been Nulak, the one we saw the fresco of. "Then pray speak aloud the 17th rite of poisoning one's enemies," commands one of the elves. You did not even know of the existence of such a rite, of course. The elves realise this only too well. They order you killed. The pike points scythe down at you, but you dodge nimbly, only to feel the hand of one of the sorceresses at your shoulder. Her hand seems to sprout rods of iron that embed themselves in you. Then she has levitated your body off the floor so that you cannot knock her over. You struggle, but the pikes batter you until she lets you fall to the floor a bloodied pulp. Your end has come in the eternal darkness, far from home. Could have gone better. A little bit early, I'm going to say. Yeah, just a bit early to really pause the recording there. So I will invoke the sausagey finger bookmark rule, and we'll try and go for the All-Mother Fount of All Life, on the basis that I think that's the only goddess I'm going to be able to bluff my way through some sort of familiarity with. Even the ogres realise that you have made a mistake. "Die, desecrator," says one. "Speak not that name here," raves the other. They order you killed. The pike points scythe down at you, but you dodge nimbly, only to feel, oh wow, it's the exact same death as the last one. Bit lazy. Is there going to be any of these that actually enables me to bluff my way through? I mean, maybe Zarahriel. I feel as though they'll be at least familiar with the Guardian of Elvendom and patroness of women who practice magic. But Zarahriel, the temptress, maybe they won't be familiar with her? The elves begin to mock you. "The slave to the temptress, eh? You will not find her ear here," nor any other part of her, come to that. The orcs snigger unpleasantly. Begone! Slink back to the 4th tier where you belong. The sorceress points to the gallery, and you waste no time doing as she says. Soon you have left the sacred vault behind. So, 3rd time, very much the charm on bluffing your way past Dark Elf sorceresses. For several hours you follow the circuitous twistings of the tunnels that lead down towards the 3rd tier somewhere below. Your nerves are strained, taut like hot wires lancing into your brain. Constant sense of peril is not lessened by the hours spent with no danger in sight. Rather, dread only increases as it becomes easy to imagine you walk a path designed to carry you to your doom. If the walls themselves were shifting on you, you could never tell. You strike upon larger halls, perhaps the very lowest inhabited parts of the 2nd tier. Approaching footsteps startle you out of your thoughts. Is Foxglove with you? She is not. Were you spotted crossing the sacred vault on the 2nd tier? I mean, I sort of was, but I wasn't instructed to make a note of it on my character sheet. There are no sounds of pursuit as you continue searching for the paths that lead ever deeper into the ground, but the sensation of being watched grows until your hair prickles with apprehension. Soon you have left the 2nd tier far above. For several hours you continue to descend without being challenged. The only thing of note which you pass on the way is the scene of a battle. 3 dark elves and as many orcs lie dead on a stone landing. One was killed while running away, but they seem to have been fighting on the same side. A scroll has been discarded nearby, its magic spent, but to your surprise you recognise it as a scroll that carries the blessings of Gauss, enchanter of arms, patron of sages who took up the sword and fought on the side of good when the Pantheon descended to Orb itself to do battle many thousands of years ago. There are no other clues as to who joined battle against your enemies, the Dark Elves and the Orcs, but there is a vile and noisome gas lingering in the hallway, which almost makes you vomit. Judging by the arc in which the bodies fell, they were attacked from a side passage. You want to take the side passage or continue down the seemingly never-ending stair? Let's investigate the side passage. This is very mysterious, very interesting. I do say that adventurers, not least Doré Lejeune, do sometimes come down into the depths. This passage too begins to descend and then becomes a twisting stairway. Food soon becomes a concern as you have run out of supplies. Your knowledge of plant lore will do you no good if nothing edible grows. Soon you must find new sustenance. For several hours you follow the tortuous twistings of the stairway down to the 3rd tier. Your nerves are at their breaking point. Tension and hunger makes your head throb. You have been listening for sounds of pursuit for so long, you can no longer tell whether the distantly muffled commands and the dull echo of a great gong that seems to sound every time you set off down another turn in the staircase is real or imagined. This is really well written. Really, really well written. Great example of how to generate a sustained sense of menace and make what is a fairly standard set of corridors and tunnels feel much, much more exciting than the relatively sterile and motionless descriptions that often dominate game books. This is fantastic writing, for me at least. At last you reach the huge halls of the 3rd tier. The atmosphere is filled with smoke that burns the lungs until you become used to it. At least the braziers burning everywhere mean that you can conceal the torch of Lumen for the time being. Together with the smoke, you become aware of a constant hum in the background. This puzzles you for some time until you realise it is the everyday noise of the denizens of the 3rd tier going about a multiplicity of mundane tasks, the sound of their voices and the scuffing of their shoes blended with many thousands of other noises into a monotonous low drone. Is Foxglove with you? She is not. Are you disguised as a dark elf or a shambler, or are you relying on stealth? I am disguised as an shambler. You are crossing a dark cavern with fluted arches meeting at points in the ceiling. Hanging from each of the points is a skeleton, a grim reminder of the fate that befalls many here in the eternal darkness. A muffled exclamation carries to your sensitive ears. What on orb is that? There are at least 2 in the cavern who understand the common tongue. You know that they are about 12 metres ahead of you. Will you attack them or try and speak with them? I'll try and do my best shambler impersonation. What are shamblers into? What's a shambler thing to say? Football? Real ale? Cheese? You tell them urgently that you are none other than the overlord of Ursmancast, nigh Edge. As soon as you speak, their attitude changes. While 4 figures approach, you go on to tell of Cassandra and Foxglove, and of your quest to rescue Glyvus, your ranger friend. Have you played Book 2 Assassin and defeated an undead warlord, attacking a party of adventurers? Well, my memory is shot to pieces by many, many years of heavy drinking, but I do recall that we did fight an undead warlord, and I seem to recall there was a priest who conjured the very same stinking cloud that we saw evidence of a level or so up. So I will say that I've played Book 2 and I have met these people. These people are familiar. You take off your face covering and greet them to equal measures of surprise and relief. They are Eris the magician, Thibault and Tafleur, both priests, and Vespers a swordsman. You saved them from a great and terrible predicament. They are dressed now as then, Vespers in a grey surcoat with an unfurled scroll picked out in white thread across his chest. Your studies in the library at Ursmancast have since revealed that this is the insignia of a reverencer of the god Gauss. Thibault, dressed in his white robe with its red cross, is a worshipper of Avatar, the one supreme principle of good, while Tafleur, whose robe is green with a white cross, reveres Illustra, goddess of life, consort to Avatar. Eris, the magician, whom you remember as a strange, capricious fellow, is a little nervous at the sight of you. The 5-spoked wheel on his robe indicates that he follows Beatan the Free. The 5 spokes are 5 of the 10 arrows of a limitless possibility that tend towards good rather than evil. You know and can trust these men. Now they recognise you. They step forward to embrace you in turn, hungry for news. You tell them much, and in return they pass on some useful information. The 4 adventurers are here in the rift for a purpose, not merely to loot or to slay evil creatures. You have enemies in common. They are hunting 3 worshippers of the chaos god Anarkil. Tuchev, Thalm and Cassandra, the very people who seek your downfall. I do vaguely remember them, yeah. Thibault tells the story of how the evil 3 dared to venture into the great cathedral of Illustra and kill the powerful high priestess before her own altar. Toffler persuaded his friends to seek out and destroy the evil trio, whom they now suspect are somewhere on the 4th tier below. Foxglove is not with me. I may choose if I wish to offer to join them, or say may fate smile upon you and go my own way. Adding more NPCs when it's been struggling a little bit to deal with one. That smacks of hubris. So I will go with them. But I think that's probably a good place to pause the recording. I'll need to restart from the beginning, I guess, on the basis that I did die a couple of times. I'm having a lovely time with it. What amazes me is that we haven't had a single fight in that entire recording, which shows again that they're still experimenting with where the limits are in their own work, which I found absolutely fascinating and really, really appealing. Combat is such a crutch that you can lean on in game books with combat systems, and so to deliberately set out to limit the number of fights so that they're going to have an actual impact and they'll be able to use them as a vehicle for storytelling shows really, really good confidence in their own skills. It'd be really interesting to see whether this broadly very positive view of Inferno continues or whether it becomes less appealing on more detailed analysis. Yeah, hugely looking forward to delving into this one on my own time. I'm going to do that right now. For you, I'll be back in just a few seconds with my closing remarks. Tatty bye. I have completed Way of the Tiger Inferno. The headline is that I really enjoyed it. It's a solidly enjoyable bit of work with only a few small reservations. If you played it when it came out in 1987, I think you'd have been on absolute tenterhooks for the final book in the series, and then probably quite annoyed when it failed to materialise for 27 years due to the original publisher throwing their toys out of the pram and cancelling the series when the authors signed with another publisher to produce a different range of gamebooks. I think I might actually have played it a few years after it came out, but I played the Way of the Tiger books in an eccentric order because I was getting them out of the local library, and I don't think they had some of the earlier ones. Having already done them in a weird order, I don't think the fact that this finishes on such a massive cliffhanger, a really, genuinely enormous cliffhanger, really registered as a problem because I was already dealing with some oddities of timing. At the finish of Inferno, Avenger has found themselves in a seriously sticky situation in the Bowels of Orb and appears to be about to get eaten by a very large and angry spider goddess. It's thrilling, and I'm so glad to get the opportunity to finally find out what happens next, thanks to the 7th book finally materialising. Overall, Inferno is a fairly simple story. There's some messing about to pick up the quest, but then we're straight into a descent into a Stygian pit of darkness that owes a little to Dante's Inferno and quite a lot to the concept of the Underdark from Dungeons & Dragons, as it presents a stable yet evil society functioning in the depths of a dungeon. You've got dark elves, and those dark elves really do like a spider. Although the Underdark only received an official name in the 1987 Dungeoneer's Survival Guide, which came out the same year as Inferno, the roots of the premise of a stable underground civilization go back to the late 70s and a series of adventure modules for the Greyhawk campaign setting. Among these modules was one called Hall of the Fire Giant King, written by the late great Gary Gygax. Is it a coincidence that there's a location in Inferno called the Fire Giant Stair? I think perhaps not. And I don't have a problem with this, honestly. A good idea is a good idea, and although in 2025 many people find the idea of the Underdark somewhat played out, in 1987 it was still somewhat fresh, and I've always enjoyed it as a concept. That's probably because my own D&D adventures rarely involve dungeons, and I've never really read much Forgotten Realms fiction, which is where the idea seems to have been most thoroughly explored in recent years. I have read Vril the Coming Race and delved deeply into the Shaver mysteries though, so I very much conceptually love the idea of underground civilizations like this. Indeed, my problems with Underdark style locations have more to do with storytelling than anything else, and Inferno does a bang-up job of delivering an exciting and fast-moving adventure that doesn't get bogged down in mazes or working your way down stone corridors with rooms on either side. This is a much more impressionistic view of a dungeon, and I think it's the perfect showcase for Smith and Thompson's skills as gamebook writers. I've often said that they take a more zoomed-out approach, and here that bears particularly succulent fruit as it enables them to leap past a lot of the more repetitive elements of exploring underground locations, with a simple observation that you walk through dark corridors and galleries for several hours before dropping you into something exciting in the darkness. This is a technique I would love to be better at myself. I intellectually know how it works, but I find it hard to strike the balance that they've managed here, where it doesn't feel like losing control of your character so much as fast-forwarding through the adverts to get back to the meat of a TV show. Each tier of the rift feels like a descent into a new realm of horror and mystery, and there's a tremendous focus on demonstrating that this is a lived space, albeit in a macabre and unusual fashion, a bit like Milton Keynes. There's a supremely horrifying detail where you can end up with spiders crawling into your brain, just like the mural you see towards the start of the descent. That is a gruesome fate right there, and it delights me and revolts me in equal measure. And I think it's made worse by the fact that the first spider in your brain doesn't immediately kill you, and you just have to wander around with this parasite up in your thinky bits. It helps make the rift seem appallingly dangerous and subtly hints that maybe you don't want to hang around for any longer than you have to or investigate anything that doesn't seem completely required. The need to get to the bottom of the pit and rescue your comrade and find out what happened to the paladin Doré Lejeune naturally pushes you onwards as well, and you aren't trying to find a bunch of magical items on the way, which makes it feel more natural to simply be always in forward motion. I've said before that I think dungeons are generally less good for scavenger hunts than other locations because, absent a graspable geography, you've no particular reason to look in a particular place. If you're told that you need to find a dwarf hammer and elven bow on the surface, you might immediately think to look in the mountains and the forests, respectively. Dungeons make that kind of logical leap much harder. The only obvious approach to finding an object in a dungeon is to explore systematically like you're looking for a misplaced file in a filing cabinet, and we all know what a thoroughly thrilling adventure that is. Inferno isn't really interested in forcing you to jump through hoops in this way. It's interested in making your journey feel constantly exciting, and I wish more gamebooks took this tack. There's virtually no objects to be found here at all, but there are plenty of keywords here rendered as short statements, such as noting that you've been seen by X or that you've disguised yourself as Y. These are used to trigger specific events later, and they do a really good job of making the Bowels of Orb feel properly inhabited and giving you a sense that your actions have some consequences in this space. There's nothing there that's going to massively upend your journey, but it does gently raise the stakes, and that is nice to see. There are some costs to the approach they have taken. It tends to make for a more linear dungeon, and that's certainly the case here. There's a few twists and turns you can take, a few blind alleys you can go down, but essentially every descent into the Inferno is going to hit the same basic locations on the way to the final showdown. There's a fair amount of choice early doors in how you get given the core mission, which I always appreciate, but all roads ultimately lead perpetually downwards. That's the cost of prioritising the narrative thrust of your gamebook. It's always going to be in tension with the player being free to approach the book however they wish. And I think different players land on different sides of the boundary of that. Some people prefer the narrative, some people prefer something that feels maybe a bit more like a board game perhaps, where you have that freedom to explore wherever you want. I want both, because if there's one thing I want in life, it's the moon on a stick. Here, the authors have cleverly come up with a way to encourage replaying the book, even though it's got this very linear structure, which is the question of whether or not you have Foxglove with you. Now, the smart thing is not to have her with you, but honestly, I loved having her along, and I wish I'd done that on the recorded playthrough. She's one of those brilliant characters who lacks a single shred of conscience or any sense of honour. She's irredeemably evil, but there's something faintly charming about just how nakedly self-centred she is. One minute she'll be begging for her life or panicking at the merest suggestion of danger. The next she's trying to seduce you and cast magical spells on you, or simply complaining that she's tired and needs a rest. She reminds me quite a bit of the Master during the Jon Pertwee era of Doctor Who, a character who would think nothing of demanding the Doctor's help when his cunning plan to kill the Time Lord rebounded on him in some ironic way, only to then try and kill the Doctor the very second his back was turned. I don't know why I find a moral void like Foxglove perversely appealing. Perhaps that is one of the things that fantasy literature is for, exploring what it might be like to have neither scruples nor any sense of shame without any of the consequences attendant on that. I think her very shamelessness really helps. The worst people in real life are usually very sensitive about appearing weak, whereas Foxglove will use whatever is to hand, and if that means she has to do crying and begging, then she seems fine with that. She's not really bothered about what you think of her. she's going to be poisoning you or sticking a knife in your back later, regardless of what you think. I do think having Foxglove on the less optimal path is also a good choice. You can beat the book without too much difficulty if you don't take her along, which makes having her tag along feel more like an indulgence to be enjoyed. I think it would have been frustrating to have to babysit her through the dangers on repeated playthroughs, knowing that she absolutely cannot be trusted and will try and shiv you the very first chance she gets. This way round, it feels like an alternative version of the story that's fun but doesn't feel oppressive. I can sort of have a little chuckle to myself when she sticks the knife in and go, well, honestly, what did I expect? I think she's brilliant. Foxglove isn't the only returning character, of course. We get to meet up with an adventuring party from books past, which is nice, although they feel much less well developed as supporting characters. Only Eris the Mage gets any sense of depth, and I am being very generous when I use the phrase sense of depth there. I feel like Doré de Jeune showing up would have made more sense, since a big deal is made about him early in the book. Also, I feel as though having a gung-ho paladin who wants to go straight ahead at all times would have made a nice contrast with your character, who as a ninja generally prefers the stealthy and the roundabout option. It's a little weird that neither Doré nor Glyvus shows up at all, not even as a corpse, given that they're both kind of central to the mission we've taken on. Once you've made friends with the adventurers, or not, you can proceed onto the final set piece of the book, which is a confrontation with Cassandra and her two dodgy mates. This is the only fight that's absolutely required in the entire book, and it seems they've really learned their lesson from previous entries that the strength of the system is its ability to tell stories through violence. This is a great fight, a high-stakes mass brawl with multiple different opponents, each with their own deadly powers, and the potential complications of both allies and Foxglove being in the mix. It's probably the best fight in the entire series and makes a truly worthy capstone to Inferno, and something that you absolutely would struggle to do in a fighting fantasy book without breaking the system quite badly. And it finally struck me why the combat system works so well as a medium for storytelling. It's because it breaks the fight down into discrete attacks, each associated with its own section. And as soon as you do that, it gives you the opportunity to create bespoke outcomes for every single attack if you want. You can have something unique every time the player chooses to punch instead of kick, if you want and if you don't mind how many sections it eats. This makes Way of the Tiger kind of bad at doing low stakes fights. You end up stuck in a repetitive loop of the same attack until you're done. But if you want to get really crazy with it, then the system is absolutely perfect. Choose a punch, make the attack roll, deal damage, and then suddenly the person you're fighting summons aid. Choose a kick, and maybe a trap gets triggered. You've then got fights strung together out of these little moments, much like a fight in a movie is constructed from different shots, and you can effectively exit the fight at any time. It's super intensive in terms of section count, but when it's used effectively, it can deliver really exciting moments, and it does that here remarkably well. I really admire their restraint in keeping the rest of the book quite low on fights. They are there, but they aren't a major feature like in most dungeon-based gamebooks. And as I say, you can avoid, I think, all of them. So there's lots of good stuff in Inferno, but are there any issues? Well, there's one or two. The first is that the book feels a bit like it finishes just as it's really getting going. The fight with Cassandra and her mates is great, but it feels like the middle of the story rather than the end, and the sudden jarring change in scene that follows doesn't feel especially satisfying in a narrative sense, although it is very exciting. Not even getting a glimpse of Glyvus feels weird as well, and there's a few odd moments in the text that don't seem to follow on from each other quite as well as they might. The low combat density is fascinating, but it does lead to the authors leaning on instant death as the main punishment for straying from the path, which isn't ideal. Because the random damage in the combats is so hard to balance around, they've wisely been quite wary about draining your endurance, but that does create problems with how to give the players a slap on the wrist rather than a punch in the face. These are all relatively minor problems though, and none of them impacted my enjoyment of the book in a significant way. There's a bigger issue with the art, which is not the fault of the authors at all. I'm not the biggest fan of Sébastien Brunet's comic book influenced art, which forms the majority of the illustrations here. It's competently executed, but I prefer a more traditional illustrative style in game books, and that's a personal preference. I'm sure younger people who've grown up with this kind of art style as the default for role-playing games and video games would probably not notice at all. What's not a matter of personal taste is that Brunet has a tendency to draw characters without strictly following their descriptions in the text. That is a big issue for an illustrator. We get a specific description of Cassandra's armour, for example, which Brunet seems to have completely ignored in favour of something out of World of Warcraft. Similarly, there's multiple depictions of Foxglove that don't seem to have paid quite enough attention to how she's supposed to be dressed in tatters. It's just not great illustration work. There's loads of illustrations of Foxglove as well, which I guess is sort of fine given that she can be a major part of the story, but feels a bit like overkill. It's not all bad by any means. I think Brunet's pretty good at doing monsters and giving them a sort of dark and impressionistic quality that I do quite like. But overall, I find a lot of his art rushed and generic and a bit low on background detail for the job that it's trying to do, which is to illustrate a story. It highlights how different skills are applicable in different circumstances. I can think of lots of circumstances when Brunet's style would be entirely applicable. Overall, though, I think Inferno is a very strong entry in the Way of the Tiger series. It feels more like a traditional gamebook than I was expecting after Overlord and Warbringer, but in some ways I think it's stronger for that. Refocusing the series back towards what the systems are good at is sensible, and at the same time it is clear that they've learned from previous instalments exactly what the best bits of the system are. The Rift showcases a different approach to dungeons and made me really think about how I might incorporate that into my own work. I love that as an outcome from reading a game book. I was so impressed by how well those parts of the book were written as well. It's probably the most evocative pure dungeon I've seen in the series. Narratively, it's a shame that it has to finish just as it's getting up a good head of steam, but there are always the trade-offs that have to be made in a 420 section game book. The elephant in the room is obviously the cliffhanger ending, and happily we don't have to wait 27 years to find out what happens in the occult realm at the mercy of a big spider. We can find out next month when we'll be bidding a fond farewell to the series. I very much hope that you will be joining me for that. Before then, we have the small matter of playing the last of the original run of fighting fantasy books, Curse of the Mummy. That's sure to be a special time one way or the other. In the meantime, you can contact me either by email on hjdoomretrofun, all one word, @gmail.com, or by following me on Blue Sky at hjdoom. Thank you very much for listening, take care, and I'll see you soon.